And welcome
Let me know if
to
it's
this
if it
webinar
bothers.
sponsored by the California Local Technical Assistance Program Center. My name is Tom O'Brien. I'm the director of the California LTAP Center and with the Center for International Trade and Transportation at California State University, Long Beach. And today's webinar topic is GIS applications for local public agencies, or we might have chosen a subheading, which is how to embrace and love GIS, even if you aren't a GIS technician, but that was a little too long for the screen. But we wanted to bring to you experts who have considered how to use GIS technology in a number of ways in the service of the needs of local transportation agencies as well as state departments of transportation. And with us, we have a distinguished set of speakers you're going to be hearing from very shortly. Riley Keller, who is the chief of the freight program branch at Caltrans. Ben Olson, who's the GIS and data manager with the Center for International Trade and Transportation at California State University, Long Beach. Sean Rassi, who's a senior transportation planner with Ferrum Peers, and Terry Bills, who's the transportation industry director for ESRI. I wanted to start by just giving a really brief overview of the LTAP Center for those of you who aren't familiar with what LTAP is and does. As I mentioned, it's a center that's based at California State University, Long Beach, but operated in partnership with the Division of Local Assistance at Caltrans and partners at Sacramento State and UC Berkeley. And our goal is, and our purpose is to implement in California the local transportation training needs and efforts of the Federal Highway Administration and Caltrans. We are part of a national network of 51 centers that provides local, rural, and tribal road agencies with training, technical assistance, and technology transfer. Our mission is to improve the safety and performance of California's transportation systems by meeting the needs of local agencies and to serve as the place to go for relevant information, resources, and training. As I said, we do this in conjunction with the Division of Local Assistance at Caltrans and with our partners at Tech Transfer at ITS at UC Berkeley and with Sacramento State's College of Continuing Education. We hope that if this is your first engagement with California LTAP, that you'll continue to learn more about what we do and take part in our programs. You can visit our website, you can send us an email request, and we would love it if you continue to engage with us via social media, which is one way that we try to push out information on training and best practices. Today's objective, as I mentioned, is to provide an overview of the use of GIS in local agencies as well as in state DOTs. Talk a little bit about its terminology and applications. We want to talk specifically about the value of story maps in creating data-rich narratives that can be used to communicate the work that local and state agencies do with constituents, communities, and external partners. We also want to hear from you about what your needs are for GIS applications. So there'll be an opportunity for you all to share information and training needs at the end of this session. What we hope that this webinar does is set the stage for future and more in-depth training. And to do that, we need your input about what matters most to you. And you'll have an opportunity to respond via Mentimeter poll, so get your phones ready. And we'll also be monitoring the chat box for your questions and comments throughout. Just by way of introduction, to make sure we're all on the same page with regard to what GIS is and how it works. We're talking about geographic or geospatial information systems, right? Spatial data visualization and interactive mapping that can connect narrative, images, and data in a way that tells a compelling story. Very often that is that's needed by local agencies. It's a multifaceted realm of technology. And the examples on the slides that follow are just to sort of give us a framework for discussion moving forward, right? If you engage on your phone with data-driven routing and travel time applications, you are using GIS, right? If you're somewhat of a political junkie like I am, and you follow the boards on election night, right? There's data points behind each of those, and that is driven by GIS. So in this case, you're maybe more of a passive user of GIS systems, but you're a beneficiary. You may use GIS both actively and more passively when you use information or submit information to a data dashboard at your organization. And this is something that takes place in the training world, which CALTAP does, outside of the traditional classrooms. Very often we think about GIS as being a tool that's taught in maybe planning or geography classrooms, but we want to make the case for the importance of GIS as a component of professional and personal development within local agencies. And you're going to be hearing from some folks who have been part of these training programs, focusing on the needs of state agencies, local government, and in particular Caltrans, as we're going to hear at the end. Right. So we're gonna start hearing from our experts now. We're going to do this starting with Terry Bills from Esri, who knows transportation and GIS, I think, better than anyone. He's going to be talking a little bit about applications within state government. Sean Receive from Fair and Peers is going to be talking about applications within local government, and also how more capacity in GIS technology at the local government allows consultants like Fair and Peers to work with local government. Riley is going to be talking about specific applications within Caltrans, and Ben is going to be talking about both free applications that can be used, so if you don't have a license, and then he's going to be gathering some data from you, as I said, for possible future trainings. With that in mind, remember to please enter your questions into the chat box. As we move forward, we'll be monitoring them. You'll have an opportunity to ask them later as well after each presentation. But now I'd like to turn it over to Terry Bills from Esri.
All right, thanks, Tom. And you can see my screen well now?
Not yet, Terry.
Not yet? All right. There we go. Sorry. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, thanks everyone for attending, and thanks Tom and the staff at Cal State Long Beach for the invitation to present. What I'd like to do today actually is to kind of give you an overview of really some of the key areas where different state DOTs, how they use GIS. Keep in mind, these are state DOTs that have very large GIS staffs, but the same concepts can actually be transferred down to whether it's MPOs or even to the local jurisdictional level. So I do want you to keep that in mind. So with that, let me kind of go through. Let me start as we organize ourselves in DOTs. Typically, we kind of start in planning. And so GIS is really critical to really bringing together a lot of information from our asset management systems, from our models, from and really to look at our deficiencies and how do we look at a really sort of analyzing a large number of projects and how do we make really the most strategic investment decisions. Where do we put our money in terms of new projects, asset management, maintenance management, and ultimately hardening our existing infrastructure. So really a key area for GIS really from the start in the planning process. Next, we kind of go to environmental both compliance as well as increasingly in DOTs, we're really talking about climate resilience. And you really don't do climate resilience analysis without GIS. So in this particular case, you're looking at literally every asset is classified by its exposure to risk and the consequence of failure. So what are the likelihood that a particular asset might be impacted, and what would be the impact on the transportation system if that asset failed? And so you can see the ability to bring together lots of different types of analyses and really, again, help you prioritize where should we really be putting our greatest emphasis and putting our dollars to really sort of harden our transportation infrastructure to withstand future climate risks. We move to engineering, and this is actually an example taken from Caltrans. This really is a great example of the ability to bring together. This is a design model. This is a Revit model, the bridge that you see in the background. And then it brings together some CAD files, some GIS. We actually extruded in 3D. So you're really bringing together a tremendous amount of information. Those lines that you see going down the roadway are actually Caltrans linear referencing systems. So that allows them to associate all of the data associated with pavement condition, any other assets, and you bring all of that together in a way that really ultimately you can do better design. And that's really kind of the move. We call this sort of a digital delivery. And how do we bring these technologies together in ways that let us really design better and more resilient projects? A critical area for every, not only DOT, but every city is really safety and operations and safety. And so in this particular case, it's sort of an interesting way of looking at crash data. We're looking at multiple years of crash information, and you're really looking at, is it a new hotspot? Is it a consecutive? Has it been a dangerous location for a long period of time? Or is it sporadic? And so that you really can begin to not only understand where high risk locations are in your community and in your region, but also what are the trends? And so that it's really helpful in terms of really being able to look at and analyze at a detailed level. Are these consistent dangerous hotspots? Was this just a one-year occurrence, et cetera? And I have put the links. You actually can go to these. So this is actually a story map, and they actually walk you through the way that they conducted the analysis, really from the start all the way through. And it does a really wonderful job of explaining the way that you might do safety analysis, and again, looking at these sorts of trends. So whenever possible, I have put the link. I think that all these slides will be made available to you after the webinar. So I'd encourage you to go back and take a look at these live. In terms of asset and maintenance management, this is a way, again, a great example. might not be able to see on the bottom, but you have the ability of really looking at all of the major asset types. So you can look at bridges, which we're looking at here, and you actually can zoom down to an individual bridge, look at the bridge inspection reports, as well as any photos that were taken of the bridge at the time of that inspection. But you also can do the same thing for pavement, for culverts, for signs, and for pavement markings. So it's really a way of organizing a tremendous amount of information and making it really easily available to anyone. And believe it or not, these don't really require GIS expertise to be able to. This is pretty much just point and click, and you get to the pan and zoom, and you get to the information that you need. So stepping back, really kind of the critical things that GIS does is it really helps you organize your information. So in this particular case, we're looking at Iowa, but most state DOTs do this. They organize all of their data. They present it in a portal like we're seeing here for Iowa. And then in addition, they'll actually create what we would call information products, but really are application areas. So whether it's bridges, if you're interested in bridges, you click on that and it actually takes you into a series of applications around the bridges, or traffic and traffic volumes. And so again, you'll have many, and it's just an easy way of making a lot of information easily available to anyone in the organization. And again, the link is there. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. The other thing that increasingly there's been a huge, I guess, shift to really sort of the public demanding transparency. They want to know where we're spending transportation dollars and why did we select those. And so this is a great example from Maryland DOT, that every project actually has its own little mini website so that you can actually see where the project is. You can get an overview. You can actually see when the outreach meetings are. You can submit comments, that sort of thing. All of those projects are then assembled in a portal so that you can take a look at every project in the state of Maryland. And again, just really that sort of public transparency and then I think the one thing that, that Tom sort of alluded to is the ability to sort of more effectively communicate, whether it's through story maps or whether it's through really these sort of simple GIS applications. But it's a way of communicating with the public, and not only communicating, but how do you create a sense of engagement so the public can give you feedback and you really create a dialogue. And that's really I think, again, another trend, not only transparency, but engagement. And how do we engage the public? How do we make them feel that they're a part of and of our transportation system? So again, the link is there. I encourage you to take a look. Again, here's back to safety. This is the city of LA, really looking at really sort of pedestrian deaths. And everyone not only has the dot on the map, but it also has the story behind it. And how do we personalize, really these tragic events, and how do we get the public to really understand that these are people behind the statistics? And I think once we do that, then we're much more supportive of much stronger safety efforts. And then not only do they communicate sort of the tragedies, but then to say, all right, here's what we're doing to address these issues. And on the lower right-hand side, you see that they're really documenting the safety improvements so that, again, the public has access to that information. So really critical, I think, as a way of communicating. And back to the engagement, this is from a transit agency. And during COVID, transit agencies, anytime they make changes to their transit routes and their service, they have a Title VI requirement. And during COVID, it was very difficult. And so they actually did it all online using GIS like this. And as a matter of fact, they had more engagement that they have ever had. So they were really quite pleased with the ability to use really the web and GIS as a way of enriching their engagement processes. And finally, really the critical issue is that how do we begin to create more equitable transportation systems? Again, all of that analysis has to take place in GIS. So again, and I'm sorry I didn't put the link, but you can actually Google, this is Oakland DOT, and they've really done a wonderful job of really creating this equity toolbox that tells them really where they need to focus their attention, communities in need and disadvantaged communities. So one area that we at Esri, in terms of getting started, if you go to the link, there's a whole set of really freely downloadable applications. You simply just download them and immediately you begin to get going. So whether it's road closures, whether it's performance management, whether it's your plans and project drawings, there's a wide range of freely downloadable solution templates there. You just download them, start entering your own data, and you're up and running from day one. So and again, I put the link at the bottom, so I highly encourage you to go. In addition, we have for your own personal use to learn any software, you can actually get all of our software for $100. There's all sorts of free training. And then we also have a roughly a monthly webinar series for transportation agencies. So I'd encourage you to sign up for those here and participate. And then I've put my email address. So that's a real quick nickel tour of kind of how GIS and so go ahead and you can, any questions, and you can enter them into the chat box, and then we'll move on to our next presenter.
Thanks, Terry. While Sean's getting his slide set up, there were two questions. Maybe you could take one and then maybe offer one in the chat.
Sure.
If you can see them, what GIS data is available for local agencies from Caltrans office? Maybe that's one for Caltrans to respond to. And then how accurate is GIS to collect traffic volumes, collision data, including pedestrians, bike, and auto?
Okay, so I will let Caltrans answer the first one, but I will say that in our Living Atlas, there are literally hundreds of thousands of data sets that are easily available to you. So I'd encourage you to take a look there. And in terms of traffic data collection, that's really a technology, everything from the old pneumatic tubes to increasingly we do it with cameras and other types of sensors, and all of that information is then loaded into the GIS. So if you want to reach out, I'll show you a number of great examples. But let's shift over to Sean. And Sean.
Yeah, just want to make sure everyone can see my screen. Tom, can you confirm?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Yeah, that question about how accurate traffic volume collision data is kind of a great segue into, as a consultant, things that we consider and the data sets that we use. But yeah, anyways, thank you, Terry, for that overview and discussion on how DOTs can incorporate the vast variety and array of GIS solutions that they have access to into their work to better understand how complex data sets can really inform decision making. So yeah, I'll be presenting on the benefits of using GIS at local agencies and how it's an effective tool or solution for informed decision making. But to kick things off a little bit about me, my name's Sean Ricci. I'm a senior transportation planner with Fair & Peers. I've been with Fair & Peers for almost 2 years now. I've been in transportation consulting for almost 6, which is crazy. Things go by quickly nowadays. I got my bachelor's degree in environmental management and resource management from University of Hawaii, and then got my master's in geographic information science. And some of my hobbies are really centered around outdoors. So I do a lot of surfing, paddling, golfing. So my affinity to the concept of where, which is GIS, is no surprise. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Quick agenda of what I'll be talking about. As a planner, how and why do I deploy GIS solutions like story maps, web applications, and other GIS-based solutions. I'll touch briefly on enterprise GIS and why it should be considered at local agencies, and then discuss some of the key benefits of working with partners who see the value in and understand capabilities and GIS concepts, and how it's really beneficial as a consultant to work with partners who understand that. So getting into it. So transportation planning and GIS, as we've seen over the last decade, data has transformed the way we think, comprehend things, and make decisions. And as you all know, data comes in all different shapes and sizes and formats and depth and complexity. And now we're in a state of time in 2023 where the amount of data we have access to is at an all-time high, with no signs of slowing down in the future. So it can be overwhelming to make sense of the differences between similar data sets developed from different data sources. So for me personally, I've found GIS as a means to understand data in a visual spatial manner. Now, obviously, this requires data to have a spatial component, but nowadays that almost seems like a requirement, whether it's tied to a census geography or it has a latitude, longitude. We often don't interact with data that lacks spatial information. So GIS to me as a transportation planner is really broken down into three components: data, analytics, and visualization. Some sort of way of describing that in my mind is I look at GIS as a treasure map, and data is the clue, analytics is the route to the treasure, and the visualization is sometimes referred to as the treasure. And so it's a large umbrella with so many different moving pieces underneath it, but it's really a core solution and tool that we use as consultants and planners to inform decision making. And it allows us to convey complex data sets, analyses in a way that is digestible by all. So from my background, some examples of how I've used it really are centered around some examples are safety work. So Vision Zero as an example, bike and ped planning. It's a tool that has gotten to be an integral component to the work that I do on a daily basis and how local agencies can make decisions. So centered around the collision side, identifying historical collision hotspots or using near miss data to predict where historically collision rates may increase, to performing bicycle connectivity analyses to highlight network gaps, to prioritize local project with regional significance. There's a lot of questions that can be answered using spatial data. A few examples of dashboards, visualizations, and maps that we've created at Fair and Peers to kind of tell a story or highlight a problem. The bottom left is an image of a dynamic origin destination dashboard that uses location-based service data, referred to as LBS data, to understand how trip making occurs just outside of the Dallas, Texas region. This solution is interactive with a variety of time series filters that can be applied to isolate origin destination info. The upper right is a static map that shows the density of truck parking along major truck routes in Southeast Virginia. So two different examples that inform decision-making about different disciplines and concepts, but again, using spatial data and different types of solutions using GIS. A few more examples. The upper left is a dashboard that shows parking density for LinkedIn headquarters by surface parking type. This is developed using Esri's ArcGIS web app builder. This example covers a much smaller extent than the previous examples, but lends to more specific data points with potentially richer data, like actually pinpointing all available parking stalls within the vicinity. And this is interactive in nature as well. And the bottom right is just a cool static visualization of showing travel flows in the Palm Beach, Florida area from unincorporated Palm Beach County. Again, telling a story with data is a principle to the work that we do as consultants. So it's cool to be able to depict different concepts in strong, visually communicative ways like this. So really the point of showing these examples is to highlight a few of the many ways that we can visualize and understand spatial data at different scales. As I mentioned earlier, the amount of data that we have access to is at an all-time high. And now a huge chunk of that data is coined as big data, which refers to extremely large data sets that may be analyzed computationally to reveal travel patterns, trends as they relate to how we move around and go to places or travel from places. And so I really love this infographic because it highlights just how much data we have access to just within our frame of view. Taking a snapshot of an urban highway can unveil countless data streams related to transportation, such as connected vehicles, which can be used to analyze driver behavior. And so this is coming from sort of the central component, the central computer of vehicles, or bike sharing data that can be used to present the environmental and energy saving benefits of bike sharing. But really the point is, big data has become integral to transportation planning in GIS and is shaping how we think in the present and moving forward. Pivoting a little bit, having access to an abundance of spatial data is great, but how we administer it, how do we administer it locally? What options do we have? What are some things to consider? So one option is through Enterprise GIS, which is integrated through an organization or agency that has a large number of users, so they can manage, share, and use spatial data. It allows organizations to have a firm handle on data management, provides a host of options for mapping spatial data and curating dynamic visualizations, and enables the ability to perform analyses from simple to complex. And Enterprise GIS is really tailored well for organizations who have multiple editors, have a diverse array of dynamic data, and work with multiple consultants and clients regularly. And as a consultant, for example, when I'm wrapping up a project for whatever discipline, let's say it's a comprehensive pedestrian sidewalk connectivity plan, that's just front of mind because that's something that I've been doing. One of the core deliverables of that project was a story map that was going to be transferred from Fair and Peers to the client. And so the client has an Enterprise GIS already. And so that data transfer and solution transfer was seamless. And so working with partners who have Enterprise GIS is a strong benefit as a consultant, because it's the data fluency and GIS fluency is upheld on both sides. But Enterprise GIS is just a great means to be able to manage your data and deploy effective GIS solutions locally. And then just to wrap things up, as a GIS practitioner, working with partners who understand GIS is, to put it simply, is a beautiful thing. Processes are more engaging. All parties are more involved and clearly see the value in using a GIS-centric lens. I've listed out a few benefits of working with partners who understand GIS and how it promotes spatial thinking, critical thinking. You really learn the depth of a problem on projects. Again, data fluency. You have a more strong tie and connect to the community. Your overall knowledge of the content is deeper because you're applying that concept of where, the spatial side, creativity is endless. I think there's so many different ways that we can display data nowadays. So there is no cap on creativity. And then visual communication. Some people and organizations and learners are more visually absorbent. So yeah, visual communication, strong emphasis on that. And I just put this design thinking process, little infographic on the right, and how I sort of view GIS as a whole and working on problems. I like to look at the overall objective. What are we trying to answer? And then working back from there. And so having a team and partners who kind of think similarly and understand the pros of and the value of using GIS is a strong benefit as a consultant on projects. With that, I will open it up for questions in the chat. And yeah, thank you all.
Thanks, Sean. There is a question about, and I don't know if you're the right person to answer this, or maybe Terry, about for water systems, what GIS programs are there for use that will work on most computers?
Yeah, I can put a link. Just like what we had for transportation agencies, we have a similar for water agencies. So I'll put a link to that, and again, freely downloadable solutions that just you get up and running right from the start. So
thanks, Terry. And if you have additional questions for Sean, please put them in the chat. We're going to transition now to Riley Keller from Caltrans. One of the stories I think he's going to be telling is that how within an organization, even that has an enterprise GIS system, how those of us who may not be trained in GIS can take advantage of the tools and make the agencies work better. And then to anticipate a question from Valerie, there's a lot you can do that's self-paced learning, but that is also, as I said, going to be the subject of future LTAP training to make sure that the tools that that GIS offers to you are accessible, even if you don't have a master's in GIS like Sean. So Riley, please take it away.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. All right, let me see here. Okay, so today first, I'm going to take you guys from the 50,000 foot level of, our some type nebulous type goals, right? And how that can be applied at the ground level. I'm going to give some examples of, how we use GIS, to prioritize projects and investments. And then, like Tom mentioned, I'm going to talk about the benefits of training and give a specific example of actually some training that we did here at Caltrans in collaboration with Tom and his team, and using GIS. So back to that 50,000 foot level, I'm going to talk quickly about, Caltrans' role in communicating with our local public agencies and community groups. And I took an example from actually the Caltrans strategic plan here, where we have a goal or a strategy that, we want to eliminate barriers towards a more equitable transportation network. And, a lot of these are, they're very high level type ideas, but so how do we get there, right? And Terry Bills had mentioned earlier, we can get there through, communication, and GIS is a great way to do that, to have some collaborative engagement. You can see here that under the collaborative engagement, we want to have direct and meaningful engagement and participation and involvement. Tools like GIS, like story maps, even the Mentimeter that you guys are using here today are great ways to be able to have collaborative engagement. We also want to support community health, by eliminating transportation-related disparities. But you don't know where to start if you don't know where it is, and that's where we implement GIS tools to better understand that as well. We'd like to foster vibrant communities, and another key point here is investment, which I'm going to talk a little bit more here about, here in just a few seconds. Is how do we prioritize transportation funding in historically harmed and segmented communities, and spatial analysis really helps us do that. So here here's an example of how we identify projects. This is actually, we use it to assess gaps and needs within the state highway system. We can use GIS to understand where our bike lanes and paths are, understanding bottlenecks. We use that for performance management, reporting, incidents, asset management as well. Here I pulled an example, a little snapshot of our active transportation inventory. This was part of our larger effort of our California active transportation plans, where we did one for each of our 12 districts within the state. So to gear up and to assess where our needs were statewide, we created this inventory with facility conditions, which helped us identify network gaps and understand comfort and connectivity amongst the state on our state highway system. And then this allowed us to create prioritized route segments and project lists. This effort was done by each individual district, rolled up statewide, where it took, we were on the ground, we were on the state highway system, or collecting all this information and then putting it back into this large inventory. And this really helped set us up to better understand, again, where our gaps and our needs are on our state highway system, and have that conversation with our local partners, with our stakeholders about, what would you like to see in addressing those gaps? And then I did talk a little bit about prioritizing right there at the end. And so I also wanted to show a couple examples of, how do we prioritize these projects and investments? Well, first off, I think I have an obligation to mention our climate action plan for transportation. Sorry, I should say infrastructure, it says investments here. But the CALTAP is our overarching guiding document of how it's a framework for our investments here within the state. So all of our investments must be consistent with CALTAP. Next, I'd also like to roll into, the more nitty gritty of enhancing our goal here, at the state, is to enhance a multimodal network with a focus on equity and environment. So we understand where our gaps are now in our, let's say, our active transportation system along the state highway. But, after we've talked with our local partners and our stakeholders, how do we prioritize these investments? If we had all the money in the world, that's great. We could fund them all, but we don't. So we really need to understand, what's at the top of our list, and we can work from there. And we do that by utilizing GIS and the data that comes along with it, based upon things like disadvantaged communities, health index scores, vulnerability assessments. To the right, you'll see some snapshots. At the top right of the screen, this is a snapshot of one of our climate vulnerability assessments. We also did one for each of our 12 districts within the state. This is actually a map that shows changing level of wildfire concern forecasted through the years. So, when we are prioritizing maybe maintenance projects through our SHOP program, we take a look at this type of data, we overlay it with where we have planned to perform our maintenance at. And then this gives us an idea of what maybe maintenance projects we should prioritize first. And then also what types of materials we could use to be able to better suit the wildfires that may or may not happen along the state highway in those areas. At the bottom right, here is the, I believe this is the SB 535 Disadvantaged Communities map. This map is key. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it if you've applied to any of the state programs like the active transportation program. One of the requirements as part of that is, it's weighted on whether or not the project is located within a SB 535 disadvantaged community. And so CalEnviroScreen is a great tool to be able to show that your project is indeed in a disadvantaged community, and it gives you more points in the end for that application. So so these are some specific examples, of how we identify and prioritize projects using GIS and spatial analysis. Next, I'm going to talk about a training, in a sense, in training for GIS and why it's important for us. I mean, just generally training is important, but especially with GIS, I think that Sean mentioned earlier that it's nice when local agencies have folks that have a basic understanding of what spatial analysis and GIS can do for the work, and being able to talk the talk and sit at the table and have, you know, a fluid conversation about it, and just understanding generally about what it is. So, you know, training is really important to have, again, have the necessary skills and knowledge to effectively, you know, carry out and safely do projects, and, you know, comply with all relevant laws, regulations, policies, you know, and then also, you know, here at Caltrans, just like I took you guys from the high level of our strategic plan goals and what are, how we can use spatial tools to, you know, meet those goals. You know, maybe your organization has those goals. So, you know, training really does help in understanding the, you know, creating that nexus between what's in the high level documents to how you can get to what you need. Really quick, I'm also going to talk very briefly about our Sustainable Freight Academy that we did in collaboration with Tom and his team. We used, it was a 4-day training where we invited all the districts. We even invited our regional partners to it. But at the capstone portion of it, I thought was such a fantastic, awesome project where we created story maps. We utilized these story maps to propose sustainable freight projects. And so here's just an example. Took a few screenshots of the one that we worked on. We called it San Pedro Bay Operations and Resilience Truck Project, SPORT for short. But basically, it was, you know, a project that had many facets that involved truck parking, spatial integration systems, I mean, you name it. And we were able to use story maps to present on that project at the end. And so it kind of just gives you an idea of how you can utilize these tools to also tell a story at a high level, and, you know, be able to communicate that goal or vision or project to upper management or to anybody else that's interested. All right, so I'm going ahead and open up for questions. I know we might be short on time, so I don't know, Tom, if you want to hold off on that for now.
Yeah, if there is a question for Riley, please put it in the box. I do want to turn it over to Ben now, because one of the things that we do want to do is connect training to GIS in capacity building for local agencies and state DOTs. And we want to gather some data from you about needs so that California LTAP can help design the type of training programs that benefit those of you who are on the call. So Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
All right, thanks, Tom. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So yeah, I'm Ben. I'm the GIS and data manager at the center that is the Long Beach home to the California LTAP. I'm going to go ahead and dive right into a brief demo just to kind of show you how simple it can be to get started using some basic GIS tools. So there are a lot of, a few free options you can use. This is the Esri ArcGIS Online platform. You can make a free account to access this. There are, tiers of access, but everything I'm going to show you right now you could do with the free tier. So this is the map viewer application. There'll be a link to where you can make a free account in the presentation. And so it opens and you have just a basic interactive map that is, familiar across platforms. You got, it starts with the United States. It's got your basic, cities, states, county boundaries. So for this demo, I'm going to pretend we're interested in looking at the Oxnard-Ventura area. And so what you can do to make this custom to your needs is add layers. And so layers is just layers are data sets. So we're starting with a base map and we're layering data on top of it. Is kind of where that term comes from. So in this demo scenario, I'm going to say we're interested in looking at freight movement along rail in this area. So there's this layers button here where you just hit add, and it gives you access to a couple different portals that have a ton of data sets and information. You can search for kind of just anything you can think of and see what's available. But like I said, we're pretending we're interested in looking at freight movement along rail for this area. So I'm going to search for rail, and then there is this federal data set for North American rail lines. And this plus button here is all you got to do to put it on your map. It's a federal data set, so it's got them for the whole country, but you can zoom to your area of interest. Looks like it zoomed it out automatically, but again, we're interested in this area. And you can add as many of these layers as you'd like. So I'm going to add one more. So again, freight movement along rail. Let's search for freight. And there is this intermodal marine freight facilities layer, again, from the federal user community. And with this plus button here, you can see there was one data point added here for the Port Hueneme. In this region, again, it's a national data set, so there's data points all around. But if we're interested in this area, we've got 2 data layers now added to this map that can give you an idea, just kind of a snapshot of how freight moves along rail in this area with your rail lines and your marine freight facilities. So from here, there's all sorts of customization options to make this look, prettier and nicer and more presentable if you don't like the colors or the icons and how the base map is looking. I'm not going to get into those with this brief demo, but you can customize as you wish. And what you can do to make this kind of a presentable finished product is just with a few simple clicks. You just have to save your work and then create an instant app, which is something that's made very simple through this platform. It really is just a few clicks, but just for the sake of saving time on waiting for the loading screens, I went ahead and created the finished product doing exactly what I just did right now. And so it looks like this. It takes your web map, makes it on a nice clean web page. And then this is a publicly accessible link that you can put on your website in a report, in a presentation, wherever you'd like to share your visual. And so there's basic elements added to, search for a location. You got your legend, and these are part of what you can customize to have included in your map. So that concludes the demo, just to kind of show you how simple it can be to get started with some simple visualizations. So back to the presentation. So yeah, you can get started with simple free tools. So you can create a free account like the one I just showed, and you just dive right in. You can find a self-guided free training that's available in lots of places online, or you can find and attend a free introductory workshop. So here are just examples of some common platforms that are used. So there's online platforms and software. The asterisk ones are the paid for enterprise software. But the remainder of them are free options. And so, and they're all linked to give you access. So when you have access to this presentation, feel free to explore. And then here's some free data sources and links to online training as well. So somebody in the chat asked about Caltransit's data. This will link to the same thing that Riley sent in the chat. And there's other examples of public agencies that make data publicly available. And then, of course, there's the upcoming CALTAP GIS applications for local public agencies course, which details on are upcoming, but it'll be a training option that is available. And so now I'd like to gather some feedback from the audience. So we're going to use Mentimeter to do this, which is a live polling tool that allows for everybody to answer anonymously. So go ahead and open your phone or a new tab on your computer and just go to menti.com and enter this code. And I'm going to switch over to that window, and the URL and code will be there as well as the first question. So I'm going to give everybody a minute to go ahead and access and answer this first question, and then I'll go through the 4 remaining questions a little bit more quickly as everybody will have accessed the platform. So which of the following best describes your principal job function? And again, just to emphasize, this is all anonymous.
Ben, just there was a question about the code. I just want to remind everybody it's at the top of the slide.
Yes, thank you, Tom. See that here. So I'll give just another couple seconds and then we'll go on to the next question. So let's go on to the next question. If you're still answering, you can take your time. Does your organization currently have in-house GIS capabilities? So yes, no, or if you're unsure, that's also an option. Next question, do you currently have access to GIS software licenses at your organization? So yes, no, unsure. All right, let's see, two more. Which of the following is the most potentially beneficial use of GIS to your organization? So these options should be a little bit bigger on the screen that you're using to answer. But there's creating live interactive online map dashboards, collecting survey and location data from the community, creating maps for city planning, managing and analyzing city data, and creating static informative online maps. So just give a couple more seconds. We'll have one last question and then we can do audience Q&A. So let's see. Final question, would you or someone at your organization be interested in a half-day course on GIS applications for local organizations? And so you should be able to continue answering that. I'm gonna thank you everybody for your input to this poll. I'm gonna switch back to the presentation. And now we have time for questions. Are there any in the chat for me, or we could take them for any speaker at this point?
Yeah, I don't see any. There's been a healthy exchange, Ben, and thank you to everyone. We're coming near the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of people's time. So I want to say a few things in closing, but I will also say that if there are some burning questions, I'm happy to keep this open for a few more minutes if people do want to ask questions. Thank you for your input on those on the Mentimeter poll. It really will help us design training that's responsive to your needs. And for those of you who have to leave and we can't get to your questions, we will be using the CALTAP eBlast and the blog to engage with you, and we'll do our best to select maybe some questions that are that will have interest to a wide audience and share responses in that way. So really important for you to stay engaged with us via social media, email, and subscribe to our communications. I do want to thank Scott Jakovich from California LTAP for working behind the scenes on making this possible, as well as Ben from our team and Daniel Burke from the Division of Local Assistance at Caltrans, who has helped shape this and identify this topic as a priority. with that, that's for those of you who have to leave. If others do want to stay for a few more minutes and ask some questions, I'm happy to keep the webinar open. Please help me, though, thank our really knowledgeable and expert speakers today. I think they shared some really important information. And we will be sending the link out for the recording. Riley, thanks for sharing all those good Caltrans suggestions. I'm sure that's going to be helpful to people.
I hope so. I feel like some of those questions are some things that I battled when I was in the district, was, going through the troubleshooting, lessons learned stuff. So hope that helps.
All right, I'm seeing no new questions come in. With that, I'd like to call the webinar closed and adjourned. Thank you again to our participants. Thank you again to those of you who attended for your valuable input and really good questions. It helps us, as I said, make sure that we're designing training and offering services through California LTAP that meet the needs of our wide array of agencies. All right, with that, then we will close.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.